The presidency is yet to explain what transpired in Poland. The EFF is now calling for the Polish embassy in South Africa to be downgraded and for that country's ambassador to be expelled. Govan Whittles joins us in studio for more on the story. Govan, good evening. Welcome back to South Africa. You've had an eventful couple of days, to say the least. I think some time to reflect on what the experience has been, being one of those journalists in that plane. Top of mind.
Right now, we're waiting for the presidency to explain what happened. We have some information from sources who, on the one hand, say that the permits were in order, on the other hand, say that there was a scramble to get the right permits, that there was concern about whether or not the permits would be expected or received well when we arrived in Poland. That concern emanating already from South African officials at Waterkloof Air Force Base. But we don't have an official explanation from our government. The only commentary on this is from the head of the PPS, Major General Wally Rhoda, who spoke on the steps of the plane when we were still stuck. And since then, there's been no official commentary. So we've been left to either take the Polish version of events at face value, or just accept what the sources are saying, that they weren't sure in the first place whether they would be allowed to go through, and they essentially went and hoped that they would be.
That must be one of the difficulties of covering a story like this, because in many respects you are in the story, confined to this plane on the tarmac, while so much is unfolding. And limited access to sources means limited access to information. And by and large, you're relying on what it is that you are being told. Given the explanations that you were given while you were in Poland and what you understood the Polish authorities to have been looking for, do you get a sense that this was a jungling up by the South African government, that we simply didn't have our ducks in a row where the documents are concerned?
Kathy, there was an interesting moment on the plane which speaks directly to that. Our colleague Olim Gambi was speaking to the Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, on Newzroom Afrika. He was on the phone, and we were huddled up at the back of the plane. This is like 24 hours in, and sitting with us is Major General Wally Rhoda, and we're all watching the police minister telling Oli that they should have had the proper documentation in place. And we all looked at the general, and the general still said, no, that's not what happened. We have the documentation. So even then he was disagreeing. But the most frustrating part was the perpetual changing of the story about what was going to happen next. We arrived, and they told us, all right, we're going to disembark. One team will disembark and go off to Kyiv. From here, the other team will go. We're going to change planes to Warsaw, and then we'll fly to St. Petersburg. Then we told, all right, the plane that was supposed to take us to Warsaw isn't here. We're waiting to find out where that plane is. So now we suspect that the presidency was scammed into hiring another chartered plane that didn't arrive. Then we're told later, okay, this plane, actually via the pilot coming on in the intercom saying, all right, the SAA crew in solidarity with you have decided that we're going to refuel this plane and then we'll fly over to the next city. And once we get to the next city, the plane to Russia will be waiting there. And then we find out that we can't fly anymore because too much time has passed. And according to the aviation laws, the pilots need to rest for 10 hours. So we're told that the pilots have now gone off to the hotel for 10 hours and that we'll wait in the plane. And when they come back, we'll fly to Warsaw. And then we're told a little later, okay, we're going to disembark now. And then we're told, no, we can't disembark because they believe that these weapons don't have permits, so everyone will stay overnight. And at one point, Kathy, the SAA crew had done the cross-check. You know, when they say on the intercom, cabin crew cross-check, close the last door before we depart.
The lights are on, the seatbelt lights are on.
Seatbelt lights are on, we were buckled up, the cabin crew were in those seats with the straps. We were told there's only one more door that needs to close and then we'll be taking off. Jiggy, no, we're waiting for buses. We're going to disembark now and find a hotel. So, I mean, that was just the theme of the entire trip. That the story kept changing about what would happen. And eventually when we did disembark, we were told, no, these guys messed us around.
The reality is that U.S. journalists that were part of this trip, and South Africans deserve answers. One gets the sense that there haven't been clear answers from the presidency around why this was so shambolic. I think the Sunday Times describing it as a traveling circus. And given what you've said, very much feels like that.
Yeah, it did feel like that. The presidency told us the reason why they're not explaining is because it was the police's duty to book this whole situation, which included the permits for the weapons that were traveling, and that they were in charge of making sure the correct documentation would be supplied. The PPS falling under the police. Remember, we found that out very clearly because of the Phala Phala situation, where the president said he reported it to Major General Wally Roda, who was supposed to take the case further to the police. So this is a police arrangement in terms of the weapons and the permits and the permissions being sought for us to get over certain countries' airspace. And that's the reason why the presidency says they're not saying anything about it. In terms of the diplomatic fallout, there are a lot of questions to be answered, because our president went to visit the president of Poland for a courtesy visit before heading off to Warsaw in Ukraine. One suspects that because by the time our president was meeting with the Polish president, we were already on the tarmac, waiting to disembark. We were furious that we weren't able to cover the courtesy visit by our president to his Polish counterpart, because we felt that if we're not going to Russia, we could have at least had access to our president after that visit to get a comment from him so that we could continue broadcasting. But even then, nothing was forthcoming. And right now, we still don't have any answers.
All right, Govan, I trust in the next couple of days you may have a lot more answers than what you do right now. Newzroom Afrika's Govan Whittles, he was on board that flight with about 119 others, I should say, that were stuck on the tarmac in Poland.